The answer as to how a Greek American kid from Milwaukee got to Yale and Wall Street, I think, is it just is two words: geographical distribution. I was the beneficiary of that. I had two of my four children went on to Yale, and I could not have gotten in today based on what I've seen. And how smart the kids I teach up there are, as well as the kids at Wisconsin, who were fantastic. So I grew up in Wisconsin. It was a relatively small but vibrant Greek community in Milwaukee. The circles around the fantastic Frank Lloyd Wright Annunciation Church there, which is an architectural landmark in the city. And I grew up an altar boy in Sunday school, and the whole 9 yards. And although everybody else in my family had gone on to the University of Wisconsin, I sort of said, well, maybe I should look a little elsewhere, and ended up heading to the East Coast. But my Midwestern roots were such that the first job I took upon graduation was in Chicago, not New York, where a lot of people went. And as I indicated, going to Wall Street in 1979, 1980 was not a popular alternative. It didn't pay well. Wall Street was dead. The great bull market that I referred to in the talk didn't really start till 1982. So it's funny because I was reminded that this weekend. I was the junior banker. My first job was I was the junior banker on the McDonald's account. And there's a great movie out called The Founder, which came out I think last week. I don't know if any of you have seen it yet. Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc. Now, I thought I knew this guy named Fred Turner was the CEO of McDonald's after Ray Kroc. And Ray was still the chairman emeritus when I was a junior banker, and the company was never around. He was already out in San Diego. He owned the Padres. And whenever someone would say Ray Kroc, everybody's eyes would kind of roll. And I kind of never knew why. I knew there was some sort of mythology about the founding of McDonald's, which is this great American icon. And then I saw The Founder this weekend, and I go, okay, now I know why they were rolling their eyes. So I don't give the movie away, but if you're all interested in business and great American historical business stories, go see it. It's worth it because we all know McDonald's, we all know, and you're going to find out how they came about making shakes with no ice cream and the French fries, and more importantly, how the idea started and how it blossomed. But
should we buy that stock?
You know what? I'm not bullish on the restaurant. I'm not bullish on the
fast food industry.
I'm not bullish on the fast food industry for lots of reasons, but some having to do with what we talked about in the talk about labor costs, and which I think are about to go up. But in any case, so I started out in investment banking, and I absolutely hated it. I hated it.
Can I just ask why investment banking? So clearly you love history, right? You have a passion.
Yeah, it's just I had gotten involved in the stock market with my dad, my dad was an investor. My dad told me when I was a little kid, he said, you'll never, if you're interested in business, you'll probably never, ever, ever really be truly independent unless you either start your own business or you become a good investor. And he impressed that upon me. He and his two brothers had a family business that was successful, but he also was a stock market investor in the 50s and 60s. So he taught me a little bit about the market. So I was intrigued with finance, even in the 70s. But like a lot of careers, you don't know what it really is till you get into your first career. And I was doing pitch books and doing spreadsheets, and this is before there were personal computers, guys. So I had to log on at 3 a.m. and the Blythe Eastman mainframe computer in New York, because that's when the regional offices could get computer time after midnight, before 7 a.m. So I figured out at one point in 1981 I would have made more money. I certainly was making more money on an hourly basis at working steel, but I probably would have been making more money mowing lawns than I was making as an investment banker on Wall Street in 1981. I mean, it was that poorly paid. Again, the pay explosion did not occur until 82, 83 and beyond. But I liked it. I just didn't like banking. And there was a guy down the hall in the retail brokerage department who ran the retail brokerage arm. And I used to go down to his office at lunchtime and talk about stocks. And I had a little money from working, and I was playing the market. And I would go down there and just listen to him tell me stock stories. And I found that hour of my day to be far more fascinating than the 12 or 16 hours I was doing analytical work, pitching bond offerings. And one day he said to me, look, we're going to actually leave Blythe and form our own brokerage firm, and we need a couple of young analysts. Would you like to work for us as an analyst in our Chicago office? I said, when do you want me to start? So that was a company called Guilford Securities. The first company I was asked to look at was a company called Baldwin United. Baldwin United was a Midwestern company. It was the old Baldwin Piano Company. And it had transformed into a financial services conglomerate. It was being run by a guy named Morley Thompson, CEO. Morley Thompson had worked his way up the ladder. He started by selling pianos door to door. You know how hard selling pianos door to door must be? Because you can't lug the product with you. So you have to sell the concept without the product door to door. It's not like a vacuum cleaner, right? It's like, this guy sold pianos door to door. He could sell anything. Well, he sold Wall Street on the idea of this being a fast-growing financial conglomerate that morphed into insurance. And they ended up buying two big companies, S&H Greenstamp, and for some of you're smiling, I'm smiling, they have no idea what we're talking about. S&H Greenstamp was the affinity points business of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. When you filled up your gas tank or went to the grocery store, they would give you like so many S&H green stamps, and you would paste them in the books, you know, and then you turn in like 10 books for a stadium blanket or something. It was, and of course it was a float business, right? Because no one ever turned in the books. So the gas stations would pay so much for the stamps, fraction of a penny, and you thought you were getting something, and you never turned them in, and S&H held on to the money, and it was a float business. And then he bought a company called MGIC Insurance, which was the big mortgage guarantor run by a guy out of Milwaukee named Max Carl. And Guilford's clients had a lot of MGIC stock. It was a high-flying financial services company. Great business, mortgage insurance. It was pretty much a great business until 2008. And Baldwin bought it, paid a crazy price, and the spread between the buyout offer and where the stock was trading was unusually large. It's 1982. And I was asked to sort of say, why is the spread so wide? Should our clients wait for the tender? Or is there something wrong with the company or the deal? Should they sell their stock? So I looked at the company. I could not figure out how Baldwin United made its money. I read their 10K 3 times, and that became one of my rules to my team. If you read the financial statements 3 times in a row and cannot figure out how the company makes its money, keep digging. There's a reason that they're making it difficult for you to understand. And so I told my boss, I said, look, it's an insurance company, but they seem to be booking profits, but the cash flow is incredibly negative, and they're voraciously raising money from Wall Street to fund their insurance companies, but yet these annuities should be cash cows, and something doesn't make sense. It turns out they were using insurance company proceeds to buy operating companies. You can't do that anymore because of Baldwin United. And they were making inflated valuations for the company so that they could borrow money at the parent and yet still use insurance company money. Then they were using the extra money they borrowed at the parent to fund the negative cash flow for the insurance operations because they were paying too much for the annuities. They were paying people 14% for their money. And at that point, rates had already dropped to below that level. Anyway, the deal went through, so we left a lot of money on the table, and I was sort of chagrined as a young analyst, but fine. But I asked my boss if I could keep digging, because something just didn't smell right. Now, it's the summer of '82. This company was on the cover of Fortune magazine in the spring of '82. Morley Thompson was seen as one of the most lauded CEOs in the country at that point. Baldwin United was the fastest growing financial service company in the world in 1982. It was Merrill Lynch's #1 stock pick. When the bull market in August '82 took off, we found out much later in the inevitable lawsuits that the analyst that was recommending the stock was sleeping with Morley Thompson, the CEO, on his private plane. That was just a little extra fun and games. But you find these things out in Discovery much later. But
I mean, we're Greek after all, so
well,
It surprises us.
But so I started calling people because I wasn't an insurance analyst. I was wading through these thick insurance statutory statements, trying to educate myself. And I was in my office in Chicago. I'll never forget this. July of '82. The phone rings about 6:15 one night. I'm the only one in the office. And I pick up the phone. Jim Chanos. Are you the analyst asking lots of questions about Baldwin United? Yes. Who's this? It's not important who this is. Are you aware of the state insurance files that are publicly available in the state of Arkansas? Who is this? You should get a copy of the files of the state insurance department in Arkansas. Click. No name, no identity. There was no caller ID back then. No clue who this was. Sounded like a local call. So the next morning I tell my boss, he said, "Were you drinking?" No. I said, "But why don't we just hire a Little Rock attorney and just go see if it's true? You know, we're not going to cost us that much." So we hired local counsel, and sure enough, a couple days later by FedEx, I get this big file. And in the file are letters from the state of Arkansas, which is where all of Baldwin United's insurance companies were, to the company saying, "We are in the middle of a triennial audit of your insurance companies, but we've already realized that because of the nature of what you've done with these acquisitions, your questionable accounting, blah, 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 we've hired a former New York State Insurance Department commissioner, who's now a consultant, to be our consultant, and his findings are that you are possibly billions of dollars insolvent." Now, this is a public letter. Like, jackpot. Wow. High-flying stock, mortgage, Merrill Lynch, every brokerage firm on Wall Street selling their annuities, making a fortune. I take this letter, and my boss says, "Look at this." He goes, "Oh my God." So I write a research report that comes out the day the bull market started, August 17, 1982. Literally, you can look, it was the bottom of the Dow. That's when I put my first sell report out. So my sense of timing was perfect. But I had all this evidence and publicly available documents. The insurance companies possibly are insolvent. Wall Street's selling the annuities. I figured this is a slam dunk. The stock proceeded to double on us. As more and more stuff came out about the Wall Street Journal a month later published the letters, the stock was up that day. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, and it taught me a lesson that you can be really right and have all the facts on your side, and doesn't necessarily mean anything over the short run. Well, around Thanksgiving, I was approached by some reporters at Forbes magazine. They said, "We got a copy of your research report from August, and there have been people we've been talking to in the insurance industry. They think Baldwin United is going to give the whole industry a bad black eye. You know, can we come out and interview you?" So, yeah, come on out. So they spent a day with me, and I had one of these offices. Now we all have whiteboards, and so I had a cork board, and I had pins with like yarn and rubber bands showing all the relationships of, you know, the various subsidiaries, who owed money to who. It looked like I was an insane person, right? Papers all in my mouth. And the guy, Dick Stern, the writer, spent 3 days with me because he was supposed to interview Morley the day after Thanksgiving. So he spent Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with me of that week. Went home to Thanksgiving, then he flew to Cincinnati to interview Morley. And I'd given him a list of questions. I said, "Look, here's questions I would ask if I was you. And I would like to know." So I got a call that night from Stern, and he said, I can't tell you whether or not I'm going to write an article, but all I'll say is that when I started asking your questions, he got up out of the room and he left. I'm like, okay, doesn't that tell you what you kind of want to know? Sure enough, 2 weeks later, an article comes out. Baldwin stock at that point, it was $24 when I wrote my report. It was now $56. And the partner in New York wanted me fired. So I was about to end my Wall Street career. And that Friday, the stock inexplicably started going down. First time in 4 months. And then a guy named Dan Dorfman, who'd been a financial columnist, came out with a Dow Jones Wire report right near the close saying, rumors are that Forbes magazine has a cover story on Baldwin United and its questionable accounting. Sure enough, Monday, Forbes came out, was not a cover story, but it was the lead story inside, and it was a fairly innocuous piece. It was this analyst in Chicago raising questions. We interviewed him, he didn't give us good answers, but they're big supporters, Merrill Lynch, Prudential Base, Shearson, all love it, blah, blah, blah. And buried in the piece was an observation by the Merrill analyst that said that we've looked at the Baldwin insurance companies, there's no affiliated assets within their portfolios. Now Baldwin at that point had already admitted to $3.5 billion of affiliated assets publicly, and that's when I knew they hadn't looked. You know, they were selling the annuities and had no idea. The stock, they couldn't open it that morning. 3 weeks later, I get a phone call, Christmas Eve, I'm in Milwaukee visiting my parents for Christmas, and it's my boss, and he's really drunk. And he says, I've got the best Christmas present you're ever gonna have. I said, what's that? And he said, the state of Arkansas just seized all their insurance companies. It's the biggest financial bankruptcy in history. And it was. And they were billions of dollars insolvent. The phantom phone call I'd gotten in July had basically turned me onto it. Fast forward, 15 years later, I'm at a financial services conference in Atlanta. I'm sitting and listening to some boring guy go on and on about property casualty insurance, and I hear a voice behind me, hey, are you the analyst looking at Baldwin United? And I turn around, and some guy I've never seen before in my life, he introduces himself. I pledged to this day to keep his identity secret. He was an analyst, an insurance analyst in Chicago, one of the Chicago brokerage firms that was selling annuities. He came to the same conclusion I did, but he had done the work. He'd gotten tipped off himself about these files, and he urged his brokerage firm to get out of stop selling the annuities, but they wouldn't let him opine on the stock until they got their people out. So he couldn't, but his conscience was he wanted to tip off somebody else because he knew it was going to be a disaster. So that was my start. And that was how I started on the short side. It was just basically good luck, this odd confluence of events, and then I had a boss who went to bat for me when the other partner wanted me fired, who said, no, this kid did the work, we're right on this, we're going to prosecute it to its final point.
That's awesome.
So that's the story, how I got started.
I like it.
And the piece of advice is, if you have the opportunity to do something that will change your life professionally, you are far better suited to do it earlier in life than later in life. And let me explain what I mean. You all get advice, or hopefully you've all gotten advice from your parents and from experience, that life's going to throw you a few curveballs from time to time. It happens to all of us, you know. You sign up with the wrong company, you end up with a bad boss, business deal goes sour for things beyond your control. And you know that you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and you know, learn from it. Don't make the mistake again if there was a mistake, and soldier on, right? But what nobody ever tells you is the opposite, and that is a number of times in your professional life, you're going to be given a brass ring to change your life. And it may come in the form of a phone call at 6:15. It may come in the form of someone offering you a piece of their business because they like you. It may come in a myriad of different ways, but you have to be smart enough to A, recognize it when it happens, because it'll happen. Just as bad luck will come your way, good luck will come your way. I assure you. And we're kind of all taught, well, let's get my time in, I'm going to work at this firm, and I'm going to work my way up the ladder, and then I'm going to get lots of experience, and I'm going to basically get some capital, save my money, and then I'm going to go out on my own and do something that I want to do. The fact of the matter is, often, by the time that happens, you can't do it. You've got a mortgage, you've got kids going to private school, you've got bills, you've got this, you've got that. And even worse, if you do it when you're my age, in your 50s, or even your 40s, and you fail, it's harder to bounce back. No one wants to hire that guy in his 50s who left the corporate side, went off on his own, and didn't work out, and he's got to come back in. It's tough. You do it in your 20s? Who cares? I don't. If I saw someone follow their dream and for whatever reason didn't happen, they need to come back, okay. Did you learn from it? Yeah. Great. You know what? You showed me you're willing to take some risks, intelligent risks, and business is about taking intelligent risks sometimes. It's too late sometimes to do it when we think we're going to get our ducks all in a row. You can do it earlier and bounce back if it doesn't work. And try it again. Because you're going to get that brass ring put in front of you every 5 or 10 years. Trust me on this. And because of the fact that you're all smart Greeks and industrious Greeks, as we all are, these will happen.